David Delaney.
Call the meeting in order, please, and turn it over to Superintendent for the swearing-in ceremony.
In November, we had the election in which we had 3 of our board members up for re-election, and fortunately, they had no opposition, which to me indicates that they have done an exceptionally good job, and that people in our county was confident that they would continue to do so. So at this time, we are going to do a ceremony with Judge Tim Browning to do the swearing in, so they will be official for the next 4 years that they can be. So, Judge, you want to do it 3 at a time, or?
3 at a time.
3 at a time. So with the board members that need to be sworn in.
That's later. That's later.
Let's go on around.
I'm gonna get between you guys.
Towards me here. I'm going to close the distance
Oh,
here.
we don't like it.
If y'all will raise your right hands, please, and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear or affirm
I do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support, protect, and defend
that I will support, protect, and defend
the Constitution and government
the Constitution and government
of the United States
of the United States
and of the state of Florida,
and of the state of Florida,
and that I am duly qualified
and that I am duly qualified
to hold office
to hold office
under the Constitution of the state,
under the Constitution of the state,
and that I will well and faithfully perform
and that I will well and faithfully perform
the duties of Levy County School Board member,
the duties of Levy County School Board member,
on which I am about to enter.
which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Let it be witnessed.
Thank you. Judge, thank you. Yes.
At this time, we will adjourn and enter into our executive session. See, those folks that are not
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Y'all got a copy last week of a resolution on assessment of accountability, and I had a chance to review it and look it over. My last known count of districts that have followed with this protocol has been 27, but I'm thinking it's over 30 by this point in time, although I can't confirm that number. But I know other districts are even considering it. But basically, in the resolution, which we're sending to Governor Scott, Chancellor, the Commissioner, the President of the Senate, Speaker of the House, to the Senators and House of Representatives, and even the U.S. Senators with Bill Nelson and Marco Rubio, Congressman Ted Yoho, the Florida School Board Association, and the Association of Superintendents. So we're trying to get the message out that we believe there is too much testing, that we have gone overboard with testing to the point that it is not to assess what students have learned or what they're learning, but rather it's but primarily for accountability purposes. And while accountability is so important and we believe in accountability, we do not believe that that should be a burden on the education of students. So anyway, we have this resolution, and if the newspaper does not have a copy of it, I will give you a copy of it. And so that the community can know that we are very concerned about the amount of testing that's being put on our students and our teachers. Taken away from instructional time, causing a lot of angst amongst the students. Are there any questions?
Board members? I have one comment, or possibly even as a question, Mr. Superintendent. Down in the middle of the first paragraph, under the "be it resolved" heading, there's a sentence that begins, "until then." Until then, school districts, this is after the "be it resolved."
Be it resolved that the school board of Lee County, Florida.
Yes, down about midway or closer to the end, there's a sentence that begins, "until then, school districts should have the flexibility." With that flexibility now, how will that impact what is already in statute?
We're asking for flexibility. This is what we are requesting. This does not mean that we are entitled to it.
Right, I understand that, but in your assessment on that, what exactly would that mean? I mean, would that counteract what is in statute regarding good cause promotion in third grade, et cetera?
No, sir.
Okay, it will not impact any.
No, sir. One of the things we would be looking at is a consolidation of some of the EOCs, and some of the double talk that they have in statute needs to be cleaned up. Like, for example, a person that passes the EOC in eighth grade may then have to take, as a ninth grader, take the air test for math. Well, he already passed the EOCs, you know, so there's just some things that are fuzzy in statute that need to be cleaned up.
So those things obviously above my pay grade of understanding, so, but other people are looking at all of those situations.
Yes, sir.
And will address specifically those things when opportunity presents itself.
Right. I think there's a consolidation of a lot of these tests that can be done, and accountability is still in place, and, you know, and following state statute. But the DOE has to work with the legislatures to make sure that these things happen.
I think we definitely have to do something about testing. I've harped for a while now on the over-testing. I happened to see an email sent out to Mr. Bennett, to the teachers over there, saying that he had calculated that there would only be 6 to 10 days, somewhere in that neighborhood, next semester that did not involve a test. And that's, who's got time to teach when you're testing all the time? I mean, and on the flip side, what kid's got time to learn when he has to take a test every day? It's ridiculous. It's just too much.
An analogy that's often used, and they use it at different meetings, and I've used it before too, but as we get ready for the county fair, if you weigh your hog every day, that does not help your hog gain weight.
Absolutely.
And so a weightlifter, if they try to max out, see what their maximum bench press is every day, they do not progress. Same thing with students. You test them every day, that's not an education. So we got to get to a point of reality here, and I think there's enough pushback in the state to make that happen.
I think it's got to become ridiculous.
Yes, sir.
There's too much of it. And I can only know what goes on in my house. I have 2 students that are A students, and they are worried about tests. And their kids shouldn't worry. They know it. They never even ask them a question. You know, this test, there's so much pressure on this test. And they can't help but feel that pressure. Our teachers feel that pressure because we feel that pressure because everything is tied to all this testing. And we're losing track of learning for testing, as far as I'm concerned.
Just one comment, Mr. Superintendent. All the tests that we give, state required.
Right, it's not us.
They're not a Lee County test.
That's right.
Yeah, I want to make that abundantly clear, and we've heard that from the legislature. What are y'all doing above all? We're not doing anything above what is required by the state. But we are trying to follow state statute, we'll continue to do so and meet the requirements.
The only way we can go above them is to have a test every day.
But looking for flexibility in these areas that we're asking for, that flexibility.
Yes, sir.
Do we need looking for action on this?
Yes, sir, I need a motion and approval to sign that, and then we'll send it to the people.
Motion to approve resolution number 15-01 on assessment and accountability.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
Thank you.
Motion carries unanimously.
Can we pass spent money.
Mr. Hastings, thank you to district and staff for doing something like that, so we appreciate that.
Two things requiring your signature since we passed the resolution are coming down. Please sign both of them. And we'll move right along while you're doing that. Item G, budget for the DMT New Willowton Middle High School. Mr. Edison, Mr. Clemens.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, part of the process here is that we have to fill out a form, believe it or not, for the state, and we have to put a number in that box as far as what we believe is GMP, or the guaranteed maximum effective. Now, everything just went out to the contractor, and y'all remember the plans that y'all approved, everything like construction documents, that's all in the hands, and I think, is it January 6th, Mr. Philpott went to a pre-bid meeting. I was there, Mr. Alexander was there, and so was Mr. Stockton. We went there to our meetings. So anyhow, that's where questions were answered and different things. But anyhow, the plans are in the hands of the contractors now, and they're going to be in the process of submitting bids. But a part of this is that we need to set a guaranteed maximum price. Now, what we have done here, and Mr. Clemens can go into further detail, we've set a GMP of $28.5 million. Now, realize that this is a conservative estimate, and that it is an estimate, but what will be true is that if, and it probably will, exceed this amount, it's going to have to come to you for approval. That's the bottom line.
All I did was basically use the Bronson School as a model, the way that we spent the money there, and use the same average percentage of the revenue. Only got $34 million to spend, so you got to figure out where it's going. So, you know, if you put more in construction, then obviously you have lesser furniture. So, you know, it's a balancing act. Everybody wants some of it. We're going to spend all the money, so that's not the issue. But what is a reasonable number? This number is just really a starting point. It's a placeholder, but it'll be interesting to see what number comes in there. So.
Taking into consideration, though, the increased cost of all of these things,
Right.
and what they were when we built the Bronson.
Exactly. So,
High School.
And we have contingency fees built into this. But one thing that's critically important is in the contract that you have with the construction management team, is that if they can't, one whole harmless out to the board is if they can't meet the GMP and build the school for the amount of money, then we go to contractor number 2. So if you don't have a price that you can agree upon, okay, then there could be damages to the board. So that's why we need to have a price, set a price, and then we can negotiate from there.
Okay, we negotiate with our management,
Yes.
whoever, okay. So they have not seen this figure yet?
Well, they were told that figure in the board meeting.
Okay, this 28 million?
Yes, sir. When it did the presentation, all along, they were told that figure.
that's been the starting point, but again, it's just an estimate. So, you know, if they come back and can justify a higher number, then, you know.
But it's got to stay under the 34.5 million or whatever it is. That's the money we have.
Okay.
So we need approval from y'all.
Okay.
Second.
I got a question. I do too, so go ahead, Mr. Professor.
Well, we do have a motion, we do have a second. Is there further discussion? Mr. Philpott?
I know this is all planned, okay, but I don't understand what some of these are, like other purchase services.
Well, other purchase services would be things, which line is referring to?
Number 3,
634.
line 3.
Okay. Well, all the 630s are part of the building itself, like the 670s, down on the bottom, other purchase services, that's for like sidewalks and stuff like that.
Okay.
But there's some things that you might not can quantify as construction management. So it would be materials and supplies that they need, you know, for the job, that actually are going into the building. The 630s are actually going into brick and mortar. So it's stuff, it's supplies, basically, that they would need to get the job done. It might even be notebook paper or something, you know, of that nature, you know, some kind of office supply. But it would be something that we could capitalize and put in the building.
Okay, now, another question. On line 5, 6 architect fees,
Yes, sir.
I mean, I know this is just an estimate, but what would the architect charge? What percent would he get if he didn't use plans that he already had?
Probably 7-8%.
Okay? All right, so that's a little reduction,
Yes, sir.
okay? And what are architect add-on fees? That's something like we decide we wanna change something?
Correct.
Okay? And then, what's the difference between non-capitalized furniture and capitalized furniture?
If the item costs more than $1,000, then we capitalize it. If
Okay?
it's less than $1,000, we don't capitalize
Okay.
it. So if we capitalize it, we put a tag on it, and we put it on inventory, and we count it every year, and, you know, it's a
All right,
process.
I should have known that, but now I know for sure. Okay, and then retainage,
Yes, sir. The retainage is basically every bill we pay, we withhold 10%. And after the contract goes so long, if they get 50% of the contract of the building's done, they can ask for it to be reduced to 5%. We do that so that at the end, we still are holding some money, so they make sure, we make sure they get the punch list done before we give them the final
and that's
check.
what I thought that was, but I'm not happy with 1%. But, I mean, I may be the law or whatever, I'm not smart enough to figure that out.
Yeah.
But,
I think
I
that's
want
a-
these jokers to, I want the feet to be held to the fire until that thing's exactly like we want.
That's why you have retainage.
But that ain't very much retained.
That's 10% retained.
It's 10%.
Until the project has been done, and then that 1% is everything's paid out.
Maybe that'll be left over.
Well, I don't
That's
think,
left over, we don't keep it.
yeah.
Yeah, we don't.
We gotta spend all the money.
Let's spend it.
Find it.
We don't find something to buy.
We don't spend it all.
Right. And,
Anything that would be left over, we have to send back to the state. There won't be,
They don't need, I already think they got $1 billion for forecast surplus this year. So they don't need it. We can spend it.
I like the way you think.
Amen.
Thank
We
you.
should spend it.
No, I don't think it's too smart on our part to send it back.
No, we gonna spend it.
Okay.
There's no worries there.
That was not my favorite subject back in school, but I'm thinking Mr. Superintendent, I'm sure explained this well to me, but the item number 16,
Yes, sir.
that is 99%, is separate from all these other percentages.
No, that, item 16 is the contractor.
That's a
That's-
total,
that's a
all,
total.
that's a total, all the
Do the
percentages.
math, will.
We got 1%.
Yeah, it's a total.
So all the other numbers above that should total up to 99%.
Yeah.
The
Thank you
numbers
for
on,
your enlightenment, Mr. Philpott.
Sir?
numbers on the far right, what do they represent?
Furniture and equipment, an estimate of furniture and equipment. is going into it. It's just a summarization of those numbers.
So no significance for them being to the far right?
No, it was just my way of trying to figure out, you know, you got basic, the components are the construction management, furniture and equipment, site improvements, and architect. Those are the components of the
Mr. Chairman, I have another question I might ask. I mean, I wasn't quite finished yet.
That's an estimate as well, you know, I don't have any idea.
And I deal with furniture. And I don't know anything about this, so I'm just asking these questions, and I apologize if I'm asking stupid questions. But, I mean, I know there's different different qualities of furniture, okay? And so what quality range are we gonna be looking at here? Like it's gonna be like a lowest end or?
We're gonna try to get the best that we can afford.
Okay.
And I know that the furniture guys and the architects and the contractor met with teachers and various disciplines and talked about what kind of furniture they want.
Right.
And they have picked out what they want.
Okay, I don't have a problem with that, but what they picked out, there's got to be different levels of quality too.
that's true.
And we're trying to, we deal with them and we try to get the best that we can.
Okay.
So,
But I think that's something we really need to work on. I think we need to get the best we can afford, which is what you just got me saying. But, I've moved in some new buildings, I know some of that furniture is. So I think we, it may not make any difference, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what quality we bought when I moved into the new building, but I hope it wasn't the highest quality it was. We took the green meanie on that, I can tell you that right now. But I just think we need to really try to buy the best we can buy.
I agree. We agree.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
maybe strike that one little reference that Mr. Philpott made,
It's on the,
the green weenie. Okay. Any other,
You ready to go to work, baby?
any other comments regarding the motion? Not all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. This is pretty cool.
Item H, contract for sale and purchase, Escobar easement to WMHS, Mr. Edison.
Members of the board, several board meetings ago, Mr. Hastings brought it to your attention that we were trying to purchase an additional strip of land to the south of the property. And he talked with you about how much that would cost and everything else. We're still under contract negotiations. We've got an agreement on the purchase price and everything else. We're wordsmithing with an individual. And, but I've got an illustration here for you as far as what we're trying to do. The yellow strip is a 25-foot road that currently exists. Okay? That yellow strip used to go all the way through the property as a road, but the plot on here has been vacated. Okay, so that road doesn't go all the way through, but the road does go that far. Now, what we are recommending is that purchase an additional 35-foot, which will be 2 acres. And I think Mr. Hastings told you that we would pay the same amount we paid for the other property, which was $10,000 an acre. So the contract that's out there and the price that's already agreed upon with most parties is $20,000. But we're working on a word or two, and one party out of about 6 that we're dealing with here has got some issues with a word or two. And so I don't have an agreement done, okay? But I think, and I talked to our counselor here this morning, I think you can approve this, given that the superintendent and the board chair will approve the document for the purchase of this strip of land. And what it will do is it'll give a 60-foot easement for the school buses to come and go. That's what it will do, or a road, it won't be an easement.
I can promise the board that there will be no discussion or dickering with the amount of money with this Escobar people, nor the amount of property. The only thing that is left resolved is, you know, they want us to do some things. One guy out of 6 who lives in Pennsylvania somewhere wants us to do some things that are actually under the jurisdiction of the city or the county or this, you know, as their roadway. That will be a public roadway. That is not roadway under our jurisdiction once it's built. And so, you know, we'll deed it over to the county so they can maintain it and so forth. So we can't promise them what this one guy would like for us to promise because it won't belong to us after it's built. And that's the holdup.
But these negotiations in no way will interfere with the estimated beginning of the construction.
No, sir. No, sir.
Now, bear in mind, the road, right now I have, that's where the road comes to here. Now, depending on what the architect or the engineers design, it may come this far, or it may come this far. But you know, that's gonna be their recommendation on the engineer's part. So, but right now, that's as far as you know, it's gonna be a guarantee to go here. Okay, that's the corner of our property. But, you know, they may be recommended to come in 20 more foot. If it comes in 20 more foot, it'll be a road to that 20 foot. So, and that's part of this discussion is that they want to say, well, they want to put a drawing here, and we say, no, we're not going to guarantee that. It's going to be for our architect and engineer saying we need to have a road. We're not going to put that under contract.
Okay, need a motion to effect here?
Well, and Mr. Counselor, if he wants to say some words of wisdom on that.
I think we don't have a final agreement to bring to the board at this time. I think that it would be appropriate to just keep the board updated, get a general sense of what it is that we're trying to accomplish, and we can bring a finalized contract back.
Okay.
Yeah, it won't affect the building of the school whatsoever at the time.
So with no action needed, thank you for that information.
Do you think this one dude's gonna be any real problem?
I mean, Mr. Philpott, it will be, the best thing for that school and for everything else would be able to have this property.
Yes, sir.
But it's not necessary. And I mean, we're not gonna sit there and say that they're gonna have public right of way through our school campus. You know, that's not gonna happen.
Right.
You know, so it is to their benefit, because it makes their property more valuable. In fact, it is a flag to their property. And, so, that,
Surely you understand that part of it.
yeah, so they do, but there's just one person arguing with it.
Yeah, there's one guy who would never even come here and use it either, you know, but he's, wants to show how important it is, but my patients are running thin. And if we have to use a 25-foot right of way where it's just one way in, one way out at certain times of day, that's what we'll do. We got other options.
Right.
And, you know, so if we can't reach a conclusion, there's also a 50-foot right of way through the middle of that other tract of land, and that's already there. And I don't want to necessarily go through the middle and come up around, but I can. We can, you can. We can. And, you know, so we do have other options available if we're not able to get a conclusion to this. This is the best option, but
Does that dude know we have other options?
yes, sir.
But that other option would, you know, what, you would spend more money in paving and some re-engineering costs and stuff like that would be much more expensive than this option.
Good deal.
Unless we go the 25-foot.
All right, unless we do the 25-foot.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson, on that, and I presume, moving to item I, you were still up?
I assume y'all have all the copies of your policies, or you have your copies?
You have any changes?
No.
Did they? I'm gonna do this a little different. As you know, one of the most valuable things we do with our consortium is that we have a contract with them, they review, they've got a model set of policies. And as laws change and things change like that, they recommend changes to the policy. Now, how that process works here is we look, pull down this information, ship it off to the various departments, and, you know, for example, you'll see some from the personnel department, there'll be some from, accountability, from the lot. We talked about testing today, a lot of the policy changes here reflect testing on it. So, and those departments, various folks, they get together, we get together, we talk, and that's how the language changes come to light here. And the first one I want to bring to you is the homeless policy, which is 5.021. And this is an example of how we check things out. Now, when you see the homeless policy, you'll see some recommended language changes. Now, we sent this, I had to send this to Laura Brown, and this happened after I made the language change. I sent this to her, and after the packets went out to you, Laura Brown had contacted the state and said, do we need to do this? The state says no. So my recommendation right now is to pull this policy for any changes. In other words, we don't need to make any changes to the homeless policy. But then I would like you to consider 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different policies. And this is I'm just going to read them off and tell you why. There are 4 different policies. 3.12, which is public information inspection records. 4.01, which is the student progression plan. 4.36, which is allocation of instructional materials, and 5.20, which is director information. The only changes to those policies are changes in statute reference. There's no language changes.
Would you go through those one more time?
Yes, sir. It's policy 3.12, policy 4.01, policy 4.36, and policy 5.2. And there are no recommended language changes to these policies, only reference to statute.
So I'm trying to clear the tape, so to speak. All right, first policy up for discussion is Board Policy 1.01. As you remember, our last board meeting, we went through our board policies, chapters 1 and chapter 2, and we talked at that time about the district mission statement and how that needed to be updated to reflect our district mission statement, which y'all adopted about a year ago. So policy 1.01 is a recommended change to our current mission statement that was adopted. The next policy for discussion is 4.06, and this is the requirements for graduation from Medgar High School. Okay. And you notice I put first off, there's a star up there. Anytime you see a star on the board policy, that means it's required to have this in statute. We're required to have a policy for this. Okay? So that's why you see a star added and you see this language added, because this language is required in policy. And basically what this policy says and what the statute says, and which policy reflects, is that once a student receives 24 credits, they're right 24 credits, and they've got all the other things met, they can graduate early. And that's what it means. And we have to implement procedures to do this, yes, sir.
Do we need to reflect that students who earn the required 24, or can we just leave it at 24 if you say clear?
Well, it says, and meets the graduation requirements, the state or statute. So, in other words, if they get 24 credits in less than 8 semesters, they can, by statute, graduate. Also, if you recall, in our pupil progression plan, we created an early graduation option, the 18-credit graduation option. Basically, that is, you have to meet all the academic requirements, but you don't have to meet the athletic requirements on the 18-credit option.
Yes, where can we find the procedures for them?
Well, that's something that we shall develop. Thank you. And that will be in policy, or will probably be reflected in pupil progression plan. One other thing to note, just for your information in statute, what it says is that if a student does graduate early under this option, they are still afforded all the rights and privileges of being enrolled in school. In other words, they still participate in to do the things they like they were in school. That's in statute.
For how long?
For a remainder of that, till they're, I guess, the regular graduation day. So in other words, if they graduate right now, I would assume if they're going to play baseball, they would play baseball. Or go to the prom. All right, a few sidebar comments on the next ones. The next couple of chapters here for policies. I know you've heard a lot about testing. Testing has consumed the district instructional team over here, and especially Candy, Barb, and I'm going to leave somebody I know, Michael, Holman, Kathy Lawrence, Michelle, and I'm sure, but it has consumed us in developing some 300 some odd tests that we have to develop. You know, that's required by statute, and just to test security, to make sure that things are done, it has been consumed. And there are tasks and stuff, and with teacher evaluation and everything else the way it is, it's totally different tasks. And the other responsibilities that they originally hired on for, they're still there too. But the testing has become consumed in our departments. So I don't know if anyone, Barb's been working on that all week, that's all she's been doing. So, in this, here is district statewide assessment programs. You see some additions in one that reflects some federal language. But you see here that we shall adopt in point 2, adopt local assessments and measure student performance in all subject areas and grade levels measured under statewide assessment program. Assessment shall measure mastery course content, describe and state adopted course descriptions. Local assessments may include statewide assessments, other standardized assessments, industry certification assessments, course assessments, and teacher selected or principal selected assessments. Okay? In other words, if there is a course taught, we have to have an assessment for it. Whether it's a state assessment or an industry certification assessment, there has to be some assessment for every course taught. Yes, sir.
I need to be a little more comfortable with the last part of that last sentence under there, and teacher selected or principal selected assessment.
I was gonna ask about that, so.
Ms. Dean, go ahead.
We've used that in the cases, because there are so many, because what the teachers did, I know you've talked about how they came in, they created the blueprints for us to create a test. But then we have these small populations, for example, exploratory music 1, 2, and 3 at Bronson Middle High. One teacher in the district teaches it. So in that case, they've been able to create a test, but it has to be approved by the district, which is the process we went through for a couple tests.
And do you want to talk about on the evaluation of the part? It says something about a principal approved it.
Right, we're allowed to have tests that have been principal approved by statute, so that's the process that we're going through. We're trying to get standardized tests or district-made tests that would work. But with the workload that we have right now, we need to make sure that we've got tests in place, and so we're using the assistance of teachers in those areas.
So, if we followed the state statute to the nth degree, we would be giving kindergartners 5 to 7 different tests.
No issue, Mr. Superintendent, with any of that. I'm just, I'm almost, if I read that, I can see the potential of teacher-selected assessments being left out at the principal's discretion. But because it says teacher-selected or principal-selected assessments.
So should I say this in teacher-selected and principal-approved assessments?
For myself, I would just, you know, and it is, nothing is totally wrong with that selection and that process, but I don't know, I just feel like you've got teachers that are really working with the principals on all of this. So I'm open, but
And in this case, the teacher came to us and said, I've got this assessment, do you mind looking through it? And that's what we did, and then I made some recommendations as far as length and stuff, and how she might want to do the performance-based part as a classroom exam, and then have the other part as the district. So a lot of times they actually come to us because we know how it can be formatted and what would be best as far as fairly testing the students.
all right, and I, as a teacher, I have done every bit of that, and y'all have concurred, but then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, and I might be able to give one sitting here right now, but the principal says, no, I want this assessment.
This is what I changed it to, and see what you say. It says in teacher-selected, and principal-approved assessments which are approved by the district.
That makes me feel better. I can speak for
No,
myself on that.
district approved.
Barb, you might want to
It
address
says principal-approved.
the timeline in which tests are given and how we are trying to control that so that one teacher doesn't give a test at one period of time and another.
Exactly, I mean, they're very secure. In fact, the security agreement went out today because we've got to have a time frame within to give these assessments because they are given at multiple schools, some of them. And there's that security issue of, face it, we've got social media. And we have had instances where things just pop out there.
No disrespect to anyone with anything, every bit of that is great, and I know y'all have worked hard, and you have included the teachers in this, but I would try to put myself in a teacher's position and say, I've done all this work, I've worked with the district office, I've worked under the Florida statute, we've done everything good. So all of a sudden, the principal though comes in and says, no, I want to do my selected assessment.
And that may happen down the, I don't foresee that happening just because of the volume of testing going on. And typically, it's with us helping them make that decision. If that were the case, there would be that communication to the teacher why it may not be the appropriate test.
And I think once we put the language up here, district approved, I think that was something else on us.
All right.
I do think this first year is going to be a year of trial and tribulation. And once we get through this year, we'll have a better idea of where we're at in this process. I think next year will be much smoother, but trying to get between 300 and 400 tests completed it's a challenge.
They've all done a great job with my position, working together. You know, but again, that was just my little.
Right, I understand there's a lot of concern by administrators, principals, teachers, everybody. But if, we will get through this year. And once we get through this year, I think that it will smooth out for us to a large degree.
And Mr. Turner, might I also add that at the very beginning of the school year, the teachers are given the assignment, whatever exam will be used for their evaluation. And so that should clear it up some too, because at the beginning of the year, they would have to determine what assessment would be used.
And that's coming up.
Can we, as a board, agree on the language that Mr. Edson proposed?
What did you come
I was gonna make, what I hope would be to clarify this, any assessment from what I'm hearing needs to ultimately be approved by the district.
And that's what it says.
So what I would just say is you go end of course assessments, comma, or district approved assessments, and take out the principal part or the teacher part, how they're selecting it. It may still be appropriate for the teacher or the principal to collaborate or work together or recommend one, but since the ultimate authority is gonna be the district, you just cut that part out and say end of course assessments or district approved assessments. I think that accomplishes what you're trying to do. It doesn't take away the ability of the teachers or the principals to make recommendations to the district.
And we do depend on the teachers for that, because they know their subject
Please
area.
understand, because there's a member of the press sitting right out there who has not been very friendly to me lately, but I want to assure you that I appreciate more than, well, as much as anybody else sitting up at this table in this room or out in any of those communities, the work that the teachers do regarding any endeavor that we ask of them. So, would that be a better approach, what Mr. Delaney is?
I like the way the attorney says it, because it flat out says it's the district's responsibility. We can gather the input wherever we want, but it ultimately falls back on the district to say, this is what we're going to do. So I like that.
So what I have, it says the last assessments and end of course assessments and district approved assessments.
I would just say or.
Or. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's all right. If you can, how many of y'all ever seen that video where they're building an airplane while it's flying? Ever seen that in some of your board training stuff? That's what this is like right now. We're building an airplane while it's flying. And number 3 represents this.
And doing a great job.
So, because we have to develop a handbook for testing. Well, we don't know what we don't know right now. And for example, and so we're having to sit down and come together as a team and make decisions about what we're doing. And Barb is developing this handbook of testing as we're going. So when we're finished with it, we'll bring it to you. But for example, we had a debate about Williston Middle School. And you have some teachers out there that are on block scheduling. Well, the block scheduling, that course doesn't end until January 20. So what's the right thing to do for their EOC test, their end-of-course test? And for that group of teachers, the team decided that they need to give that end-of-course exam in January, because that's an end of course, the course ends. So, you know, there's other folks in the district that wanted to give their final exam or whatever in January, but other teachers across the district had the same course, and we said, no, you can't do that. Everybody has to give the test on the same day, because it wouldn't be fair to the teacher in Bronson. Wilson teachers giving it in January, and Bronson teachers giving it in December. That's Wilson.
So my group is block scheduling the same course that another
Is a year-long course.
teacher is giving the Carnegie unit.
Yes. So anyhow, those are discussions and things and problems that we, as we go along, we got to figure out. And that's what's going to go into the procedures manual that we're developing. So that's what we got to do. That's what it means. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I just have one, and Mr. Rivers about answered already about the story of local assessments. Is that a local assessment, is that something we make up, or?
We have done interim tests in the past, but right now the EOCs are our local assessments.
Okay.
And they're scored through Performance Matters. The teachers, you know, we just stand it up and the scores would be calculated the next day for them.
Okay, thank you.
And next, board policy 4.41, where you see that we include the local assessments that are adopted. In other words, the tests that we're using, the teacher adopted tests or teacher-made tests that the district has approved. We have to keep these things secure. Uh, 5.19, basically what this policy means is that, or at least the part that's, there's a lot that this policy has, but the part that's changing on the front page, some little nomenclature to represent changes in federal law. Category A are essentially what's called, what I call permanent records. They have to stay in the key folder. Then you have category D records, which are things that after the student graduates can be purged. Okay, so in other words, you don't have to keep any work experience reports in the key folder from the fraternity.
Counselor, you're okay with the language of this regarding the educational records?
Yes, sir.
So we have to say that's fine.
Now,
Yes, sir.
is that intervention records designated for?
Okay.
Retention.
Retention.
They created the word.
The GS, by the way, the GS7, the schedule, general records schedule GS7, that is a federal and state document that's puts out that tells us what records and stuff that we have to maintain. That's kind of a holy grail for record retention. That tells you how long you have to keep your grade books, how long you have to keep your plan books, all that sort of stuff. And you'll see back on the last page, or the next to last page, and I just added under Paren 2, Paren C, that they can review them on the school board Lee County website, the policies. Several years ago, you put this information, I'm talking specifically of Paren 3, you put this information in the code of conduct, and this language that's in the red here matches what you had previously put in the code of conduct. And this has to do with directory information and disclosure of personal identification, other things. So a student gets a code of conduct and they have to sign that they've received it. So, and number 4 is a new statute out there about biometric information. So it just says we're not going to collect or retain any of that. Any more questions on this one? .32, there's a new statute out there about prohibiting hazing. Now, you already had a policy that was entitled Club Initiation Ceremony Hazing Activities. So instead of creating a new hazing policy, we just incorporated that language into the existing policy. You see the red star there now, the hazing language that's in statute. This is a required policy. Okay.
There's one comment regarding that. When we say club initiation, what clubs do we have?
Well, there are certain clubs that have initiation ceremonies, like, for example, one I'm thinking of that's perfectly appropriate is the Beta Club generally has a candle lighting ceremony, wherever they do things, and they light candles and stuff. And that's a perfectly appropriate per policy ceremony that happens. Do they all dress up and?
Do we go far enough in that direction, or is there any additional organizations that students become part of that have some type of ceremony?
You mean non-school affiliated, but
I know, sir, I mean, not, some that are not designated as a club. And do we address that somewhere?
Well, I don't know what kind of where you're going here, but.
Any club or organization. So if it's not officially a club, it's probably an organization.
well, there would be sometimes students begin these clubs that have nothing to do with school, but yet they act like they're clubs while they're on school grounds, not sanctioned, and certainly, those two would fall under that. I'm thinking like, you, whatever you wanna call it, the Gilbert's County Boys, or the 318, or whatever, you know, but they would still fall under this, they have to act appropriately while they're on school property.
A little more specifically then, Mr. Philpott, would you be aware of anything with, young students coming into the FFA? Or anything that goes on there that could be shuffled to?
When I first started teaching, Mr. Turner, we used to have FFA initiation. 1 year, going through that, we never did have it again.
Okay.
But they do have a green hand ceremony.
We had a great time.
Okay. I didn't understand ceremony, just so that no one can come back on us saying, well, Williston High School Green Hands had to do this. That's my only is.
Well, I think as you read through the policy, it might answer some questions on the answer here.
That first paragraph pretty much says that.
But have we had any incidents lately, or that's been brought?
No,
Haven't heard any.
Not this kind.
Yeah.
They might have had some in Florida State, they're not here.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for that clarification.
Good job, very well said.
Thank you.
And all the red language, and I will say this, I read through I've got the statute right here. I read through the entire statute, I read through the model policy. The model policy that they gave us mirrored all the requirements in the bullying policy. The statute does not say all that. So I've toned it down to where it's got all the requirements for notification and doing all these things, but all these little nuances that are in the bullying policy, policies and procedures and stuff like that, all right, they're not in this policy, because they're not required. So I put what's required in the statute in this policy, and if you want a copy of it, I have it right here. 6.30, assessment of employees, and this goes back to some of the comments that were made earlier. You see the addition in number 1 of student learning growth. And you see, just as Ms. Dean indicated to you earlier, instructional personnel shall be informed of the criteria for assessment, including the use of student performance data and indicators of student learning growth. In other words, they talk about what test is going to be used for the teacher evaluation deadline.
Is there a date certain as to when that notification must be done?
Now, the whole conversation has to be done, I think it's 6 weeks from the initial date of school, as far as your evaluation, how you will be evaluated.
Okay.
Am I correct, Ms. Dean?
Yes, I wanted to go back where it says in student learning growth, and we could put and/or proficiency, because some of these exams are based on proficiency or percentage of students proficient.
So sometimes within that first, what did you say? Teachers have to be, or instructional personnel have to be notified of how they're going to, or on what they're going to be assessed on
Yes, within the first 6 weeks.
within the first 6 weeks.
And that's in the labor contract.
That's where I'm going next. Thank you, Ms. Dean.
Any questions on this one? And at the very last says the superintendent, and we have to do that. We have to submit instructional performance appraisal system to Department of Education for approval. That's required, that's heavy. And the principal evaluation person, and the district evaluation appraisal system. Our last one to look at is 6.37, employee personnel files. Just one addition here. And this comes from the personnel department. Says no material derogatory to an employee shall be open to inspection until 10 days after the employee is notified pursuant to 3B of this rule. We need to go back to 3B. Additional information related to written materials previously placed in the file may be appended to such materials to clarify or amplify as needed. Copy such materials to be added to and employees' personnel file shall be provided to the employee, either by certified mail or postal delivery. Any questions, comments? Okay.
Okay, so what you are looking for is a approval to advertise this for a public hearing at the January 20th meeting. Okay. Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing any, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Good discussion on the policy stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Edison. Okay, Ms. Pam, are there any changes to the minutes, item J?
Yes, sir, there are, on these board policy workshop minutes for November 12th.
Correct.
Let's see, about middle ways of that big paragraph there.
About 6 lines up from the bottom.
Yes, sir. Says Board Attorney David Delaney gave the board information regarding email and texts being public records and encouraged them to, and I put reply, but it should have inserted in there, encouraged them to not reply all. So we're adding the word not. I had left that word all and written it down wrong. You pointed that out this morning. So we'll be inserting the word not.
All right, and that document becomes a part of the minutes. Okay. Chair is entertaining a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the November 12th board policy workshop and December 2nd, 2014 meeting. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Consent agenda. Ms. Philpott, do you have any questions?
Oh, Mr. Chairman, excuse me, sir, I do have one comment on the, I guess it's the minute. On item 9 on page 2, about using Salem.
Is this regarding the December 2nd meeting?
No. Yes.
Okay.
It is. I know that we sometimes take a feeling toward teachers to do this kind of stuff, but I talked to Miss Salmon, she talked to me, and she said it kind of worked out that way, because she was gonna stay to the end of school, but this lady wanted to come back, and so it worked out just right for her to be able to leave in the middle of the year rather than wait to the end of the year. So I guess I'm kind of defending her in this particular case, because she's a good teacher.
She is an excellent
And I
teacher.
hate to see her go, but,
Yeah.
but I just wanted to explain that if I might.
I would also like to add, Mr. Philpott, that while she did resign in the middle of the year, she waited to the end of this grading period so that all requirements for this first semester will be completed. So, I don't have an issue at all with a teacher that does that. I have issues when they resign 2 weeks into the school year.
Exactly right.
Yeah, too.
And in speaking with administration, this was actually a help to those in middle school, and that this person was wanting to make that move from the elementary back to the middle. So that's
Thank you for letting me,
Thank you for that comment.
Yeah, I think we've made 2 excellent hires here lately. I know there's not superintendent's comments at this point, but it counts. Our teacher of the year was, for the district, was a new hire last year for Wilson Middle School. And this is 2nd year in a row that we've had a 1-year teacher win district teacher of the year, both of them from Wilson Middle School. And so I think we're getting a wonderful staff put together there, and very, very happy and proud of her.
she's a very impressive young lady.
Yes, sir. Both of them are, both the last 2. And actually, I looked at all of the the finalists for it this year, there were some excellent, excellent teachers on there, and so to be selected out of that group speaks volumes to me.
Thank you. Would you, any other comments, questions regarding the consent agenda or addition to? Mr. Philpott?
No, thank you, Mr. Turner, thank you.
All right, sir. Mr. Asbell?
I don't have anything on the consent agenda or the addition to. I do have a question on the superintendent approval item. And I know you told me this before, but what is a flipped classroom?
Yes, I would like for Barb to answer that.
What is that?
That's so easy, I'm gonna let Barb
A flipped
answer that.
What about
classroom,
Joe Grant that way?
a flipped classroom is actually where some of the material is presented prior to the classroom via either, via technology, via a smartphone, YouTube. For some of the elementary, it may be a clip from their online math resources. It may be a reading text or something that's paper-based. But what it gives you the opportunity to do, to present the material, and it's front-loading the students with the information. So when you actually get in the class, you can start helping the students or answering their questions about what you was front-loaded if they had any questions. But what it allows the teachers to do is to allow more time in the classroom to work with the students and work on their homework as opposed to sending the homework home. You're sending some of the information that's coming out beforehand so they can come in and start working right then. Had a really good turnout, had great response. I've had requests for it to be done again. Just the person that presented it was Catherine Mueller, who's done it at Williston High, and she did a tremendous, tremendous job with her presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's absolutely not what I thought it was. That's cool.
I can put it in Edison language.
All right, what
This
is
is
it?
a little older. It's kind of like when you go to college, whatever, they give you a syllabus. And you go down there and they say, read this or do this before you come to class. Well, it's what you do before you come to class. And you comes into class and the student knows what they don't know or knows what questions asked, what to look for in instruction. So more time can be put on teaching kids what they don't know instead of just what they do know.
And it expands the opportunity for differentiation because they are able to work with the students and go around and help assist them instead of spending a lot of that time front-loading them with that information at the beginning of class.
Well, that's what the way the state of Florida wants it done. They could learn that ahead of time where they have class time to take a test.
Thank you, Mr. Asbell. Mr. Powell, do you have any questions or comments concerning the consent agenda?
I just was curious, how do, like in the middle here, like with A number 1, how does a person all of a sudden change from
Where are we now?
on the consent agenda, general items, number 1, A number 1, just like here, December, how do we all of a sudden, and then from, change from pay, is there reasoning behind that, or, Mr. Clemens, maybe you can answer some of that, or?
Yeah, sometimes what we're paying them out of ends like in September or October. Not all of our grants are funded or July 1.
Okay. So, and then the other thing is I noticed we've had an awful lot of guidance counselors, so we have some changeover, so what are we?
Yeah, we have a guidance counselor, both of them that are resigning. I would miss greatly. They're wonderful people, have done a wonderful service and work for us. Ms. Solly, because of health reasons, I think she has put in like 47 years total in education. I mean, and she deserves time off to get her health back in place. Wonderful. Ms. Gwen, she had a baby and out on maternity leave and so forth. But I think her husband also is changing occupations and residence, and it's a combination of just family.
And what's our procedure like? We can't really have how do we sub that, or how do we cover those?
One of them, we have a temporary in there that we've had in there for a couple of weeks. Ms. Solly's position, she's resigning at the end of the semester,
Right.
so it's like January 16th or something. I hadn't looked, but,
Yes.
and so We are spending this time trying to find somebody to replace her.
Is that, on Ms. Wynn, is that supposed to read December 12th, 2015?
Should be 14.
Should be 14, okay.
Thank you for pointing that
That may have been one of the, due to the error by the chair, I omitted Ms. Pam making any corrections to the consent agenda or additional.
out. I'm sure she called it.
She did.
Just did, and
No
that-
one else did, but she did.
I did.
Thank you very much.
You didn't know you were going to file.
You're welcome.
I noticed it right there.
All right, Ms. Pam, did you notify us, please, of the corrections?
Yep, I had some changes on the regular, consent agenda. Over on D, under, illness in the line of duty. Laura Brown, her hours per day is 8 hours per day. She's actually 12 months. So that should read 8 hours per day.
Not said that.
Right. And then on the back page, under F, student trip request, number 2, Joyce Bullock Elementary, I had put down Daily Stone as a chaperone, and that should be Ann Daly and Meredith Stone. And they're not taking a commercial carrier, they're taking 3 regular school buses.
Thank you, Ms. Pam. Does that redirect any comments, questions, Mr. Philpott?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Asbell?
Motion.
Mr. Coward?
My last thing that I wanted to ask is, like, when we send these people to conferences and stuff, and they come back, do they ever come back before the board and just maybe 5-10 minutes, tell us what they learned? Be a good thing that then we can pass out to some of our public and let them know that we're trying to support our teachers. And
At one time, we were doing that as, the board was doing that. Yeah, so if it's something I don't believe we've done it recently, no, so if it's something that, we would like to put into effect, I'm sure it's something that we consider.
I think looking at that, that's very interesting, that flipped classroom. I think that's a really interesting concept and something that, that everybody would appreciate and understand and get out to the public, the things that we're doing in the classrooms. And that's a very good, possibility if you want to share things like that.
Right. I think that's exactly what
I think, though, we may have to be a little bit considerate of a number of them being teachers now as well, and not interfering with their classroom time, maybe schedule that for a nighttime meeting. So, Mr. Superintendent, would you help us get that into effect, please, sir?
We do already have some teachers scheduled to come to the next board meeting, to present what they've done and where they're at.
yeah,
But I would love to hear what Dr. Hall discovered down in Denver, Colorado.
And I'll be happy to share.
That's right.
Thank you, Mr. Coward. Anything else?
no, sir, thank you.
Mr. Edison has something.
I'm going to add to it, and I believe we're okay, that since this trip is in April, I believe this has been going through transportation, but I know when it came to me, the commercial carrier is the reason it got on here, and I know commercial carrier bus drivers, we have them. One of the things that we have set up right now, we will not do any field trip that's going to require a substitute on a bus for the last 2 months of school until transportation approves it. Because getting the school bus driver on the bus is paramount to getting these kids home and stuff. That's going to be first before we go on a trip. So, and what I just want to make sure is that I believe it's going through transportation this April 17th trip. I believe it's been approved. But the reason it got on here is the commercial carrier, and I just want to double check to make sure that they've approved this trip in the transportation department.
So we'll pull this one
So can I
off.
pull this one?
Unless Mr. Tyson can confirm that.
I can't confirm that it's on there or not.
Okay, then we'll pull it.
Plus, Mr. Philpott wants to go on the trip.
But we will be.
Does that make sense?
That's it.
No, it's like-
No, it's in April.
It's in April, we can bring it back.
All right, so item under F, student request, item
conversation, I just want to double check before we put them in the bond.
Mr. Philpott pointed out something we both missed. You right there at item F, number 1 with the varsity cheerleaders. What is an all-championship game in Charlotte, North
Yes,
Carolina?
North Carolina. Mr. Edison?
They actually, and this one's my fault and a combination of a non-school person not understanding school language issues, reasons after the fact. But they actually cheered at the ACC championship game.
All one competitive conference.
All right, at halftime.
Just change all to ACC.
During the summertime, they won their cheer camp division, whatever, and as a result of that, they received an invite to come to the ACC championship game to do a performance at halftime.
That explains a lot.
And thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for putting that.
No, thank you for bringing it up there, Mr. Philpott. It was concerning me that we had that many chaperones for 14 students in ACC championship game. Answers that question. Want to go see that?
Ms. Brookins, do you have any additional
I think
questions?
we've gone through all those, and I've had these questions answered, but, Mr. Edison brought up something, and it's probably a little off, but he said we are still having trouble with subs and bus drivers and,
Well, particularly, and Steve, pipe in where you want to. At the end of the year, everybody wants to go on a field trip to a theme park, and the principal signs off for the board's conversation a long time ago. The principal deems it educational when they go.
right,
But the problem is that when they go to Wild Adventures or wherever they go, that means that they have to get a sub to drive the normal route. And when you have 20 buses going in the afternoon, that's not going to be bad.
that's right.
Then we have to have 20 subs and 20 more buses to run the routes. So we don't approve the last 2 months of school, unless they can get a sub driver, we will not approve that trip.
So are we really, in essence, making it even more difficult for these field trips and?
Well, they can go at other times other than that. I mean, it's just, you've got to have the people to drive the buses to go.
You're referring to sub drivers on the field trip or sub drivers for the regular route?
Generally, sub drivers for the regular route.
If it's for the regular route.
But they want to make that trip in February.
And we're having difficulty getting sub drivers, right?
Well, at the end of the school year, sometimes we got athletics going on, we got baseball, softball, tennis, we got all of these things. You got clubs and organizations, you got elementary kids when you take just the 4th grade class from Cheatham Elementary, you know, you're talking 5 buses right there.
Right.
And then when you throw all the other stuff on, you could very easily have 20 buses going on field trips or to somewhere other than routes on any given day. And so it's not always possible to find. The thing is that the way we're set up, a bus driver generally can make more money by going on a field trip than they can run their route. So they will opt to go on a field trip, and then we have to have a sub do the route. And it's a burden. It's a burden.
And everybody wants to go on the last Friday in school.
That's right, yeah.
And they have, and Steve can drive a bus, Joanne can drive a bus, Tim Berry Hill can drive a bus, our mechanics can drive a bus. But our mechanics need to be concerned about keeping the buses safe to drive, not driving a bus route. So.
Yeah, I understand that's a good point. I think that's a good clarification too, because a lot of times we hear a lot of comments, we can't go on the bus or we're not getting good field trips, but that is something that needs to be out there, they need to know.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And that's all my agenda comments.
This is something that I think that we need to address. We spend $2 million a year above what we are allocated for transportation, with FTE for transportation. $2 million a year. Guess where that comes from? It comes out of the general fund, which affects our ability to adequately fund the schools and the teachers.
Yeah.
And so that's a real concern that I have as superintendent, is funding transportation issues at $2 million a year above the money it generates.
Yeah, I agree with you. What is your what is your solution or suggestion
That's part of it.
on that? I mean, 'cause that's a lot.
If I had a good remedy for that, it would already be in place, but there's some things in contract that makes it very difficult, some past practices that makes it difficult, but it's certainly something that has to be addressed, and all I can tell you right now is that these are things that concern us and we're working on. I don't have the solution.
Are there any other questions, comments regarding consent or addition to? If not, Chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent and addition to consent agenda with item F2 of the regular consent agenda being pulled at this time.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Not all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Mr. Superintendent.
Take one and pass it down. We agree. First of all, I'd like to say that in our communities, we've had two very serious tragedies lately with the unfortunate tragedy in Bronson of a parent and then the car wreck in Chiefland that took the life of a seventh grader at Chiefland Middle School. And so our hearts are saddened over that, and, you know, we have grief counselors available, and Dr. Hall has made sure that all of our staff and students are well taken care of. So we appreciate that. This, I'm gonna read this because I want it in the minutes, but this is my response to Jerry Lawrence's concerns that he presented over the last couple of board meetings. But I'm going to address it to the members of the board. I'm addressing this to you. Members of the board, I have spent the last 30 years defending and protecting the students, educators, and staff of our schools in Levy County. As the superintendent of schools, I will continue to support our dedicated teachers as they labor in the educating of students. Education is not an easy occupation. But the intrinsic reward is that the knowledge that we are doing a noble work for the individual and our society as a whole. Furthermore, I know that each of you share the same passion for our students and educational system that I possess. Collectively, we have dedicated well over a century either teaching or administrating in the Levy County schools. It is this passion, this commitment, that continues to push Levy educators and students to greater achievements. Allow me to enumerate just a few of these accomplishments. Our high schools are nationally acclaimed for high-quality advanced placement and dual enrollment programs. The end-of-course exams rank Levy students in the top 15% in the state in geometry and U.S. history, while 99% of 8th graders passed the EOCs for Algebra 1. In 2013, the Florida College Board named Levy County to the AP Honor Roll, only one of 11 districts in the state to receive this honor. Since 2010, we increased the number of high school students taking dual enrollment college courses by 54%. The accolades in our multitude of other programs are too many to enumerate. And I'm thinking of things like our athletics, where we had 2 state champions last year, band, chorus, vocational programs, and their clubs like FFA, FHA, HOSA, and so forth. The accolades are just too many to list. And this by no means is an exhaustive list, but just a sampling of the wonderful attributes of the Levy County school system. I would never portray the idea that we have met all of our goals and are satisfied with our achievements. There's much work to be done, and we will continue to to devote all of our resources to move our district upwards. While serving as superintendent, there have been many additional challenges placed on educators by the federal and state legislatures. These include, but are not limited to, a reduction in the state budget by $11 million, changes in evaluation system, changes in pay scale structure, changes in state standardized testing, and more, much more testing of students, curriculum changes, and etc. In fact, we are currently addressing 34 mandates that are largely unfunded mandates or underfunded mandates. Even though I make no apology for holding employees to a high standard of accountability, and I will not tolerate unlawful activities, the mistreatment of children, nor unacceptable job performance. I hold our 900 employees in high esteem. It is truly a time for compassion for our educators, our administrators, our educational support personnel, and most importantly, our students. It's a time for working together, a time to help each other. Today, together, we can make a difference. Now, that's all I've got to say about that. And so, we will move on from there. Let me wish all of you a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holiday. May not see some of y'all again before next year, but I certainly hope you have a safe and happy, wonderful holidays, and I hope that Santa Claus can find your house. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hastings. And as chair, I'm going to break protocol just momentarily, and I'm going to go first with the board member comments at this time, because if I don't, anything that I might want to say, y'all will already pick it up on. So, and it's very brief and to the point that congratulations to those teachers that were chosen by their peers to represent them as the teachers of the year from the respective schools, along with the support personnel, and especially congratulations to the two district winners. And like Superintendent, I too wish y'all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Ms. Brookins?
I'd like to address the board, please.
Okay.
Board members, I have some changes and things that I am doing in 2015, and I take my job as a board member extremely serious. And I'm going to have a conflict with our second board meeting of the month and with our morning meetings. I would like to respectfully request and ask you to consider flip-flopping our times. I don't know, I haven't asked Mr. Zwaney, because I know that we take a vote and we do our reorganization meeting, but I'm going to need to miss some meetings for the second morning meeting. And I would like to ask if we could please do our first meeting in the morning and our second meeting of the month in the evening. I don't know if this is possible, if we can do that, but I don't like to miss board meetings. They're critical, it's my job, I want to be here. So would you please take that under consideration? It would also affect me on the January 20th board meeting, so I would have to be absent on that day. And I don't want to. So would you please consider that? Thank you.
So are you talking about flip-flopping all meetings or just that January meeting?
No, I'm talking about all meetings, so that's why it's a formal request that I would like to ask.
Basically, what would be happening there is instead of the PM meeting being on the first meeting of
That's
the month,
correct.
the AM meeting would be on the
That's
first.
correct.
Okay. I'll defer it obviously to council now, but I don't think that's anything we can act on at this time because it is not an agenda
Right.
item.
That's right, it's not, and I know that we've made exceptions, for meetings or, changing, times and this and that for different reasons at different times, but this is a huge request and, it's something that we need to certainly look at, so.
It will be an agenda item for the next board meeting.
Okay, and then, be able to be there.
You won't be there for that.
Meeting,
I was gonna
because
say.
we've already changed times on that.
Can,
We don't
well,
need my vote.
can we make like an emergency decision affecting that January 20th time?
Councilman.
I think there's enough time to advertise it, is it?
Let me ask.
There's a good time to advertise it, and we have made changes before at this point.
Yes, we have. We found that there have been
Many
exceptions.
times.
I'm just talking
They're
about
not
that.
about changing all of them, but
Right.
at a specific meeting, we
Yeah, we could definitely move
This is
the
only
first
we
one.
have to the 20th.
Right, there's no.
Right,
doing
that's
anything
correct.
between
Yes, sir.
Okay, so, the chair will entertain a motion to that effect, that we have the meeting in January in
Evening.
the PM.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to do that. Is there any additional discussion regarding that one meeting? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those like sign,
Thank you very, very much.
motion carries.
And it's gonna be on the agenda at that meeting about
Discussing.
discuss it, okay.
And we'll have to notify the still.
Right, and that is, and I understand, I mean,
I'm not suggesting this, this is just totally for informational purposes, but there are districts that only have one meeting,
That's
a month, which is, one has been Dixie County for a long time, but Gilchrist County just voted to go that way.
No, we have to.
You had to,
Yes, sir.
but
We voted again to have to.
you did. You might want to inform your superintendent of that, because he's the one that told me you were going to war.
Well, the suggestion was made to go to one, but we didn't.
Mr. Calvert?
First thing, just wanted to thank the superintendent and thank Mr. Tyson. So I think while we were down at Florida School Boards Association, had an email, so we had a little minor buzz, so I appreciate the communication, so, and appreciate you very much keeping us all in the loop on things. So, the second thing is, I saw the emails from Miss Becky and Mr. Bob, and it's good news to hear. I'm glad that we've got our participations up. So even though I know our expenditures are kind of up, but we're in the,
Moving in the right
we're
direction.
moving in the right direction, and it's a lot of hard work that went into that, so I
It's
just,
always a dark cloud.
well, you know, we're still working on it, and I think, you know, if everybody gets behind it, so the more that can help us, so, and I think Ms. Becky said she had a nice grant that she had applied for, that we've got some new equipment coming, so just appreciate the extra effort in going out of the way, so between both Mr. Clemens and Ms. Tyson, so. Last two things was the School Boards Association, so we took our ethics class, so, and finished that. And also, I really appreciated some of the classes that they had the breakout sessions. And one of them that I thought was really unique was dealing with public records. And there's people in the state that their main goal is to walk into schools and ask for public records, not wanting the public record, but just with the intent for them to be turned down so they can then sue, and that's the way they make their living. And I just hope that, I was glad to see with our public records policy that we're addressing and making sure all of our people, especially because what invariably happens is they walk in to a school secretary and she's sitting there and she panics and says no, and then just want to make sure that we're letting our people know what the policy should be. So, and then the other one was a unique thing that was out of St. Lucie County. It was dealing with teacher support, and the lady was she worked at the district office. She was instructional team, kind of went out and was in the schools, different schools, 2 days, 3 days a week. But they had Saturday professional development once a quarter, and through, they had 150 teachers that signed up for it. Obviously, they're a much bigger district. But at the end of the year, going to those once a quarter, 8 to 3:30 on a Saturday, the teachers came out with their ESE certification. And it was kind of the only monetary involved the district had was feeding them breakfast and lunch. So I don't know if that's something that we could take on, but maybe something that we could look amongst our brothers and sisters from Gilchrist County and Dixie to kind of put something on together that would be a positive thing, so for our teachers to help support them. So, And then congratulations to our teachers of the year, ESPs, and Merry Christmas to everybody, so.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Mr. Asbell?
Kind of jumping on your coattails there, I thoroughly enjoyed our time together at the School Board Association's meeting. I went to the little class there, the little breakout session that dealt with some of the Common Core and the testing that was put on by Lee County that became famous. It was fascinating from that, from several aspects that I think the multitude of the people don't understand. Our hands are tied on a lot of that stuff, and we that deal with it on a day-to-day basis know our hands are tied by the state, by the Fed, all that good stuff, and just how constricting and how broad the web that is out there is. And a lot of people don't understand that. And I think a lot of people also don't get this. I'm a parent, and I am in the same boat, struggling with the new way we're taught, because every night I sit at home trying to help, and guess what? This is an old dog that's having to learn a new trick, and it's tough. But don't you want it to be tough? Everything that's worth a dang is tough. If it comes easy, you don't really appreciate it. And so I was able to learn a lot, and also able to see that we ain't alone in this struggle. There's other counties. Now, there are a couple counties in there that they live in a fantasy world that we'll never aspire to because they have more money than got good sense. But the rest of us that are normal, old-fashioned rural counties, that we depend on that money, that is so tied to all these blessed tests that we are constantly beat down with, we're kind of stuck there. And we need our people that live in our counties to contact our legislators, to contact, if you have no Senator so-and-so, call him, tell him, I'm tired of that, it's too much. It's absolutely too much for the teacher, for the student, for the administration, everybody. It's too much. It's time that we stand up. And I noticed that. The other thing was, like everybody else, I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. I was asked to extend an invitation to everybody at the old gym. The church that now leases the old gym up here is going to have a Christmas Eve little celebration ceremony. Invite any and everybody to come out. There'll be cookies and cake and music and little message to be brought that night. And gonna have a good time. Want to be sure to invite everybody. And that's about all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Asbell.
That's all. Christmas Eve.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
As Mr. Esmond said, I did go to that bid meeting the other day, first time I've ever been to one of them. It was pretty interesting. And I was talking to the little dude at the end, he said he was impressed, first of all, with the number of people there. But he also said he was impressed, and I was too, with the amount of local people that were there. And so, it was, I didn't know exactly what was going on, but it was pretty interesting, listening to him and that kind of stuff.
I counted 21 in my session.
And I think there's at least that many in the first session. I too went to the conference in Tampa and I learned some things. I went to one, something about a cloud. I think I may have one from a cloud. Because I didn't understand nothing he said. He was, and I didn't say too much, but he was way above me. But I did go to one called compliance or engagement. And I really enjoyed that. It was pretty interesting because there was, we need to get students engaged, not just compliant. I don't know how you do that, but it was pretty interesting, some of the things. And one that Chris mentioned about the thing that impressed me there was the amount of support they gave those teachers in that particular county. And I know we do the same thing here, but it was amazing the amount of support they gave those teachers. It was elementary school, I think. But it was pretty interesting from that standpoint. So, I too would like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and safe New Year. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Philpott. I'd just like to interject on what you said regarding the engagement. There's a lot of new best practices going on now with how teachers can better engage the student in their taking charge of their own learning in that direction as well. So that's a good point to bring out. Is there any other business to come before the board?